Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Sanders, and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today, what I want to do is to talk about three basic types of constant force. And the the introduction to this is simply so that you can understand why it's important, what they're used for. In a nutshell, what it is that when you wind up your watch, you get it all wound up, and as the watch unwinds, the amount of torque goes down. Now there's a at the very first when it's fully wound, there's a whole lot, and then there's a period, sort of a period before it gets really low, and it's not too high. And this is what they attempt to do, is to even it out somehow. So we're going to take a look at that, and we're going to look at the ways that they attempt to smooth it out. Now, the first one is a double barrel in parallel. Now, there are two kinds of double barrel reference. One is called series, and the other is in parallel. The one in series simply lengthens the amount of time that your watch will run. So it'll, first of all, the first barrel empties, and as soon as it does, or right before it does, it then shifts over to the second barrel, and so you end up with a longer time between windings. Now, the double barrel does add some extra time to it, but the big reason behind double barrels is that it smooths out. And it's sort of like one horse pulling a cart, and he sort of staggers a little because it's a heavy one, and versus two horses pulling the same cart, and it's a little easier for both of them, so it's a little smoother. Um, the one pictured there is one by Andreas Streller. Has he, he does so many good things. And getting one is not impossible. This one is F.P. Jorn Chronomet Sylvain, and they've gone crazy expensive. But another one, this is one that I found with a double barrels. It's a Farbe Luba, and I found this on Etsy for under $100. I mean, so you can probably find them on eBay and some other places, but they're little watches, and they have there's not it's not great horology, but it's double barrels in parallel. Some of the other ones that make it, Schwarz Etienne Reserve de Marque, one of the older ones. Oh boy, they have some older ones too that they don't make anymore that you can find on the used market, and they also have double barrels. Andreas Streller, the one with the movement I'm showing here, all of his watches he put in the double barrels. Uh, Fabre Luba that I mentioned, MB&F Legacy Machine Thunderdorm has three barrels in parallel. So that's see really smooths things out. Now, the second one I want to talk about is called the Geneva stopwork. It's also some call it the Maltese Falcon stopwork. And what it does, I think I probably had talked about it before, and I think a lot of times I had it wrong. Okay, uh, essentially what it does, it stops the winding at a certain point before it gets into the high torque. In other words, you sort of it where it's really strong, and then it goes down and sort of evens off. It sort of stops it from getting to the really strong area of the mainspring, and there's some different ways of doing it. And one of the reasons they call it the Maltese cross stop work is because this mechanism, I think I got it, the one in sort of purple blue there looks something like a Maltese cross. And then what you have essentially is that you have this piece that goes around on the barrel arbor. The arbor is the one that holds the barrel itself, and then in that or above it, you have this finger. I'll call it that finger, and it goes. And as you wind it, it moves the Maltese cross around, and until it hits there's one of the fingers on it or one of the arms on it that's a locking arm, and the other ones are passing arms, and they simply go by it, and so you don't, after winding it for a certain amount, it stops. It stops. Now, the final one is tough, and by tough I mean in two ways. One, it's the watches that have it are very expensive. The concept behind it is very clear. What it is that these, in order to have constant force, you have two springs. You have the main spring, and then you have a weaker spring called the remontoir for rewind. And what it does is that every few seconds it rewinds, and so it's unwinding that affects the power that releases the escapement. And so even though it's not as strong as the mainspring, it can't be because the mainspring rewinds it. The little winding, it's always the same. In other words, it doesn't, the power that it has to release the escapement is always the same. You don't have a lot of torque at the beginning and then hardly any at the end. Instead, you have this one that's constantly rewinding, and so you have a constant force, a constant torque. How to get it done? It's really difficult. The image there is a newer one by Luca Soprano, Derek Pratt remontoir. Derek Pratt was a guy at Urban Jurgensen for years, and he developed just a brilliant watchmaker. Some of the companies that have them, FP Jorn, Gronfeld, Luca Soprano, who I just mentioned, Allanga, Sunda, Langenheim, Gabriel Forcé, Ferdinand Berthold, Andreas Streller. I once talked to Stephen Forcé at Gabriel Forcé, and I asked him, I mean, this was some years ago, quite innocently, how come more companies don't have the remontoir? He said, because it's really hard to do. And so, anyway, so if you ever get a chance to get one of those, they're wonderful watches to have. Anyway, that's sort of a basic overview introduction of some of the mechanisms, and these are more traditional ones, mechanisms for constant force. Be very interested to hear what you think. Maybe you have one of these watches that has it. I'd like to hear about it. Opportunity to subscribe if you like. Until next time, this is Bill Sanders for Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection.